Good evening. It is 6:30. Members of council are assembled when you're ready to begin.
Thanks very much, Don. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. And the second item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and I'll read that this evening. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. Third item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments, and no minutes to adopt. So we're on to public meetings. And give me one sec, because I should have got this out when you suggested.
Meeting.
Okay. So next on the agenda is a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment application Z 2024-004 for Northport Meadows, and it's a public meeting under the Planning Act. The meeting on this file is now open. The purpose of the public meeting is to learn about the application and to hear from members of the public. First, we will receive a report from planning staff. Then we will hear from the applicant or their agents. Then we will hear from any members of the public. Members of the public are advised that the ability to appeal the decision on this application may be limited if you have not provided comments on the application before the decision is made. Comments may be made verbally before the committee or submitted to staff in writing before the bylaw is passed. Individuals looking to speak to any item or to this item will be afforded 5 minutes. After we have heard from the public, the committee will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. So now I'll ask the planner on the file to present. And we have Jake this evening, so take it away, Jake.
How about that? There we go. Doesn't want to stay up. That's all right. I can stand here. Okay, so the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment before you is to remove a 10-meter width maximum, which exists on joint or shared driveways. So that's when 2 driveways are right along the lot line and they function as one joint driveway. So this would apply to several end unit townhouses in the Northport neighborhood along Rosner Drive. The individual driveways on each lot would still be regulated by the remaining provisions of the zoning bylaw, so that would be maximum of 7.5 meters wide or 50% of the frontage. Broadly speaking, driveway widths are regulated within zoning bylaws to attain a few planning objectives. So these are to ensure sufficient areas for permeability, to provide space between driveways to ensure sufficient on-street parking, and finally to maintain streetscape character. So I'm just going to walk through each of these. In terms of permeability, no issues would be anticipated by this widening of the driveways. First, the individual driveways on each lot are still meeting the width requirements in the zoning bylaw. So that sort of overall intent that's set by the zoning bylaw for amount of permeable area is still met on a per lot basis. On top of that, because this went through a subdivision approval back in 2016, this has been subject of a stormwater management plan, and the slightly increased driveway width is still within the parameters of that stormwater management plan. Next, in terms of parking, given that individual lots could actually have wider driveways if they weren't shared, this arrangement of having joint driveways maintains a reasonable amount of on-street parking space. Second, the subdivision has been designed with ample on site, driveway, garage parking. So that provision for on-street parking is more applicable in some of the older neighborhoods. Finally, it's not anticipated to impact the streetscape as, again, in this arrangement of consolidating the joint driveways, that has the effect of actually consolidating the green space between each driveway. So to have a proportionally wider driveway on those end unit townhouses is not anticipated to impact the streetscape. So given the above, staff opinion that the proposal maintains the intent of the zoning bylaw and could be supported.
Okay, thank you for the report. So now we'll hear from members of the public, and I will ask first if the applicant or their agent is present, if they wish to speak. Doesn't look like it. So no, nothing from the applicant. So I'll ask now if there are any members of the public here to speak in favor of the application or with questions, concerns, or objections to the application. I'll ask one more time. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak to this file? Do we have anybody online?
No, sir.
Okay. Are there any written submissions that were not already discussed in the planning report presentation or oral submissions?
None received.
Okay. So then I'll ask if any committee members have any final questions on the application before we close the public meeting to discuss the application. And I see Councillor Halpin and then Councillor Mayette and Grace.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I'd like to ask why they want the driveways to be wider. Thank you.
If it's okay through you,
Yep, go ahead.
ask the applicant. Do you feel comfortable answering the question? Okay, you can use the mic just so it's
Make sure to give us your name.
Great. Stuart Doyle with Barry's Construction. Thanks for the question. Through Mr. Mayor. So with this particular style of townhouse that we've done in Ivings Drive, it is somewhat different from standard townhouses where they are narrower lots. Where this style here, which is just a different product we offer, allows for rear yard access through the actual property. So you don't need easements at the back. So we purposely designed through the draft plan these wider townhouse lots. Now on the end units, simply because the shared driveway will not allow us to line up with the edge of the garage. So essentially we have to build a driveway that goes halfway through the garage and then fan out. So really the only reason for this essentially is that we want it to look better. The customers who are buying them with the wider garages, they're buying a bigger unit, a bungalow, which we find sell better, just have a little bit better driveway. Now, it's also important to keep in mind, and I think Jake did a really good job explaining it, some of these we may not need to do this. Because if, say, for instance, we have an odd number of townhouses in the block, and we decide we're going to start with the shared driveways at one end, the other end may not need a shared driveway. So we could get a full width driveway. It won't exceed 50%, but it will be over if they were combined to be 10 meters. You know what I mean? So some of these may end up being single driveways, not shared driveways. So it may not apply to all the different lots that we've applied for, but this allows us on the end units to just allow a little bit more flexibility for the homeowners as they come in.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Mayette and then Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. I'm still a little bit confused. If the individual driveways are within the parameters of the bylaw, why are we asking for a relief on the bylaw? I'm just not getting it.
We'll get the planner to speak to that.
So can you repeat the question?
If the individual driveways are within the parameters of the bylaw, what relief is being sought here?
Sure. So the way that the zoning bylaw is set up in Saugeen Shores is that you could think of it as 3 layers of regulation on a driveway width. The first is that it can't be wider than 7.5 meters. This is within this zone. Next is that 50% of frontage. So if it's a 10-meter wide lot, it's actually reduced to 5 meters. The third is that there's this joint driveway element. And sorry, I'll take one. Driveways have to be offset the lot line.
I think we have you all right there.
Yeah. Okay. Oh,
Yep. You're
we're
good.
back. sorry, driveways have to be a meter off the lot line. If they are proposed to, the exception to.
And are we asking for the bylaw to be changed to reflect that, or we're just asking for a variance from the bylaw? I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Counselor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is related to the issue of permeability. And then probably this is for town staff. I've heard from a couple of different residents who said that on their new build, they were told that their driveway had to be paved or concrete. And I want to know if that's true, and if so, why, if we're concerned about permeability.
We'll turn that over to the manager of development services. Or we'll turn over to somebody from development services, Candace, in this occasion. Candace.
So follow up, why do we have this requirement?
Further comments? The deputy mayor.
Thank you, and through you. I'm supportive of the application, but I just wanted to echo what Councillor Grace just said and hope that in the future we can have a discussion about driveways, because there are other driveway treatments that provide permeability beyond a hard packed surface and concrete. Even interlock gives a little bit of wiggle room in terms of water going down. So it seems like in today's world, Councillor Grace brought up something that should be a future discussion, because a solid surface, there's options now that I think are worth considering. So I just wanted to echo what she said. Thank you.
Yep, understood. For the purposes of tonight, we'll stick to the to this width question, but that's a conversation for another time for sure. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I support this application. The question I have to the planner, you said that the green space is not negatively impacted. You know, if you've got two driveways being joined together, 10-meter, and typically you'd have a driveway and 1 or 2 meters of grass, driveway, 1 or 2 meters of grass. I don't understand, if you're taking green space away, you're putting more concrete, more asphalt in, how are we not negatively impacting green space? I don't understand your comment. But when we're taking out green space where you could put 1 tree or 2 trees in that 1 or 2 meters, you're not taking away greenery by asphalting and concreting. You know, some of the subdivisions I'm seeing recently, not just Barrie's, all around the community, is to me, and I know we're getting into site plan control here a bit, but to me, you know, it can look a little barren with the amount of landscape I'm seeing on boulevards and front lawns. I know it's only 1 tree required, but if you're combining a driveway from 1 into 2, might be potentially losing a spot to put a tree in the front yard or on the side, you know, close the front yard. Well, why not take that tree we're losing and put it into another area on the boulevard or 2 on a lot next door? I just don't get your comment about we're not negatively impacting green space, because I think we are. I get that, but okay. Anyways, I'll be supporting it. I just think we need to continue to pay attention, close attention to, you know, what we're planting for landscape, for the beautification of our neighborhoods. Greenery is important, so we should never lose sight of that.
Sure. So we'll get Councillor Halpin next.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So just to be clear, if they had separate driveways, the double driveway could be 21 feet. Could be 7.5 meters. And the single one on the other side could be how big? Five meters. I get where you're coming from with this, but I'm remiss to make a bylaw that's going to now make even less green space. Because for me, if those driveways weren't shared and you had a meter in between, they could line up. You know, that would have been another way to make them line up with it. And, you know, just because I think I appreciate that we're using land wisely and that we're making higher density and using less acres of land per dwelling place. Yet at the same time, at this point, I don't want to take away from the green spaces that we are having. So I would maybe have supported this as a, you know, as an adjustment, but as a new bylaw, I'm afraid I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Just so we can clarify, Councillor, this applies only to these, what is it, 8 lots? 8, am I right? 8 lots in this particular development. It isn't just to be clear, it doesn't apply across the municipality. It's only to these 8 lots in this subdivision. That's it. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Okay, I understand that now. However, we are setting a precedent when we do this every time. So thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that. We'll get the Deputy Mayor and then come back to Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, and through you. When I look at the drawings, one of the driveways, the one that has the single car garage, the lines are the same on both current or what's proposed and what the bylaw would require. It's only the driveway with the double car garage. And when you look at it, I believe that side, that lot is a little bit bigger to begin with. So, you know, and when you look at the drawing, lining up the driveway with the garage does make sense, in the sense that, you know, you're having people in and out of a garage and, you know, for safety reasons, I guess, it's better to have a straight line in. But I believe that lot, is a little bit wider. So there is, still quite a significant, maybe not significant, but quite a bit of green space that's there because it's a bigger lot to begin with. So, it's not the one with the single car garage. There's really no change on that side, from, what would be okay with the bylaw. It's really just the one with the double car garage. Is that a fair assessment? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mayat.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman. To be clear, even if we weren't to approve this, there's still provisions within the bylaw to have the driveways with zero clearance between them. Correct. So if we were to turn this down, the driveways would still be most likely touching each other and no green space down the middle. Right, okay.
Okay, if there's no further questions from members, then we can close the public meeting and consider a recommendation on the application. So I don't see any further questions. So we will do that now. I'll now declare the public meeting to be closed, and we will now consider the recommendation. And give me half a sec just to bring it up. So the recommendation is that council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z 2024-004 by Barry's Construction and Insulation Limited and bylaw 39-2024. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the deputy mayor, seconded by the vice deputy mayor. Any discussion to the resolution? I might just make a comment that, you know, so at this point, under the existing bylaw, with a driveway that's combined like this, a person could build a 10-meter wide driveway. The applicant's asking for something just a little over 11 meters, 11 and a half meters, give or take, which is relatively minor across only 8 lots and a pretty large subdivision. If they were to build them not abutting, they could build them, 7.5 meters a piece, so they could have 15 meters total on the same piece of property. So they're actually 4 meters less than what they would be allowed by as of right if we didn't adjust this. So I think it's a good compromise. It's a pretty minor bit of business, makes it easier for the developer. And I don't know why we need to be, I don't think we need to be quite so stringent. I think we can allow a little bit of flexibility in order to make it easier for the developer, particularly when the impact is, you know, 1 meter over 8 properties, 8 meters, you know, it's over the whole subdivision. It's pretty minor stuff. So I support it. And those are my comments. Any further comments? If not, then I'll ask all in favor and opposed. That's carried. Thanks very much. So now we're on to, my computer wants to keep trying to restart here. So give me a second. I'll use the paper. Here we go. So now we're on to our second public meeting. This is a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment application Z 2024-006 for Blue Water. And it is a public meeting under the Planning Act. The meeting on this file is now open. The purpose of the public meeting is to learn about the application and to hear from members of the public. First, we will receive a report from planning staff. Then we will hear from the applicant or their agents. Then we will hear from any members of the public. Members of the public are advised that the ability to appeal the decision on this application may be limited if you have not provided comments on the application before the decision is made. Comments may be made verbally before the committee or submitted to staff in writing before the bylaw is passed. And once again, remind anybody who wishes to speak to this file, you'll be afforded 5 minutes to address council. After we've heard from the public, the committee will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. So I will now ask the planner on the file to present the application, and over to you, Jake.
Okay, first Testing a new mic.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. All right, so if this sounds familiar, it will. We, just to make sure we're meeting our obligations for a public meeting, we have to go through again for the other site, a couple minutes south, but same idea as what we saw in Northport. So purpose here is to amend the zoning bylaw to remove a 10-meter width maximum for a joint or shared driveway for several end-unit townhouses along Ivings Drive in the Blue Water neighborhood. Individual driveways would still be regulated by the remaining provisions of the zoning bylaw, that being 7.5 meters maximum or 50% of the frontage. The zoning bylaw regulates driveway widths to achieve a few planning objectives, being areas for permeability, space between lots for on-street parking, and to maintain the streetscape character. We don't anticipate any issues of permeability because the driveways are still meeting the width requirements of the zoning bylaw, for individual lots. Second, that the area has been reviewed through a stormwater management plan and continues to fit within those parameters. We don't anticipate impacts to parking, given that the individual lots could have wider driveways if they weren't shared. So the proposal maintains a reasonable amount of on-street parking between the driveways. Second, that the subdivision's been designed with ample on-site parking. Finally, not anticipated to impact the streetscape of the area as grassed areas are paired up between paired driveways. So this configuration allows a reasonable amount of green space between driveways. Given the above, staff opinion is that the proposal maintains the intent of the zoning bylaw and can be supported.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. So we'll now hear from any members of the public who wish to speak to this file. Does the applicant wish to speak to this one? No. And so then I'll ask if there's anyone from the public here to speak either in support of the application or with questions, concerns, or objections to the application. I don't see any. Is there anyone online for this one? I'm seeing.
No, sir.
Okay. And no one in the audience looking to speak to it. Are there any written submissions that were not already submitted in the planning report presentation or oral submissions?
No, sir.
Okay, so then I will ask if any committee members have final questions on the application before we close the public meeting to discuss a recommendation on the application. Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I'm looking at the drawings, just where it says the end unit townhouse properties are highlighted in yellow. And most of them make sense, but I see highlighted properties in the middle of the block. I don't see any driveways there, but they seem to be next to each other and so on. So I'm just wondering, are they really end units?
Turn to the planner.
Sure, I can speak to that. So the configuration of the townhouses along there are groups of 8. So there are end units that happen in the middle of the street because there's the end of one group of 8, and then there's a space, and then the start of the next group of 8. So that's where you'd see 2 highlighted beside each other in the middle of the street.
Okay, so just to follow up, Mr. Mayor, there is a space that this drawing doesn't indicate that, but there is a space after the 8th unit, and then it starts again, another 8 units. Is that the idea?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there further questions from members before we close the public meeting? I don't see any. Okay, so we will now declare the public meeting to be closed, and we will consider a recommendation on the application, and I'll read the recommendation. It's recommended that council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z 2024-006 by Barry's Construction and Insulation Limited and bylaw 40-2024. Is there a mover and seconder for that by Councillor Mayette and Councillor Duhaime? Any discussion to this resolution? Seeing none, then all in favor? And opposed? That is carried. Okay, that brings us to the end of our public meetings this evening. Thank you. And we are moving on now to reports of municipal officers and committees. And the first one is on Oak Street Phase 1 subdivision agreement. And Candace Ham has that presentation.
Good evening again. My report this evening is for the Oak Street subdivision, Phase 1. So the lands have a draft plan of subdivision that has been approved. The developer is prepared to enter into a subdivision agreement. The Phase 1 that we're looking at this evening is for 7 detached dwelling lots that will front onto Shore Road in Southampton. Future phases of this subdivision, which will include 8 additional lots, the creation of a new roadway to connect Deer Run Court and Oak Street, and also a 2-acre conservation block, will all be subject to future subdivision agreements. So we are just looking at the first 7 lots this evening. The subdivision is in keeping with the draft plan of conditions, the conditions of draft plan approval, rather. Cash in lieu of parkland dedication is being sought for Phase 1. And also a special condition has been included in the agreement that will require a minimum of 2 additional residential units within Phase 1. That concludes my report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So it is recommended that council pass bylaw 41-2024 to enter into a subdivision agreement with 1000313 Ontario Incorporated for Phase 1 of the Oak Street Plan of Subdivision. Is there a mover and seconder for that resolution? The Vice Deputy Mayor and Councillor Davinsky. Discussion. We'll start with the Deputy Mayor and come to the Vice Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to, through you, make sure that I understood. So each of these 7 lots will be required to have 3 residential units on them. So is the condition, is it that they have to have these 2 additional dwelling units, or that they could have 2 additional dwelling units?
Mayor Charbonneau. So the way the wording in the agreement has been drafted is that of the 7 lots, 2 of those will have 1 additional residential unit. So if there will be a total of 9 units on 7 lots for this phase.
Okay, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Well, it was about secondary dwelling suites and as well. So it's good to see that. And I just, my question is, in all of our new subdivision agreements, is that the case where that is now a requirement? Did council make that decision a year or 2 ago that all new subdivision agreements will have the secondary dwelling suites? And I don't know what the ratio is. This one's well, no, seven units, and 2 of them will have secondary dwellings. So is that the case for the, I know we're not speaking to the next 7 right now, but would the next 7 have 2 additional as well?
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So the idea is that anytime we're negotiating a subdivision agreement, staff will work with the developer and make recommendations for the number of units. And again, that's the minimum. If the developer decides to have more than just that minimum 2. But it is my understanding that, yes, it is the desire of council that when we're negotiating the subdivision agreements, that we suggest that we would like to see additional residential units.
And perfect, and not Airbnb units, but rental units?
That is my understanding, that there would be 1 primary residence, and then if there's going to be an additional residential unit, that would be either be rented out.
For rental purposes?
I believe that would be up to the discretion of the owner of the lot. So it could be an additional residential unit, perhaps for a family member.
I think it's good. I think we're good. I just think it's a good thing we're adding it into subdivision agreements. That's a good thing, and we can bring more rentals into the market. That's good news. So thank you.
Okay, further questions or comments? Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So this was all approved previously in 2017, and it's being reapproved because it was sold. Is that how this goes?
So once there's a draft plan approval, that property can actually be sold, and that draft plan approval can transfer to the next owner. But with a draft plan approval, there's a number of conditions that need to be met. Entering into a subdivision agreement is just one of those conditions. So they're seeking final approval so that those lots can be formally created and then transferred into private ownership. So this is just them doing the next step so that they can formalize the creation of those lots that have been approved in principle.
So therefore, all the other agency approvals and everything have gone through with this in the, like, so they would have heard from Saugeen Valley and everyone else previously in 2017. That would have been correct?
So you, Mayor Charbonneau, yes, that's correct. All the agencies would have been circulated. And the conditions of draft plan approval will specify all the different clearances that they need to receive. The town is one, but there are often other agencies that require clearance as well. So they'll be working towards getting all of those clearances.
Oh, okay, so it does not have all the clearances. This is just the first step?
That would need to be confirmed with the county. They're the approval authority. So what we're doing is helping them to fulfill their municipal conditions. So we enter into an agreement which checks the box that says they've satisfied the town so that the county can finalize that approval.
Okay, and I'm sorry if, I just want to make sure that I'm clear in this. So this has already had all the agency approvals and everything back in 2017. And it went through all those things and everyone said, okay, but we're here today basically because of a change of ownership required this step. Is that correct?
No, the change of ownership really has nothing to do with it. If it was the original owner, we would be in the same spot here. It's just that
Okay.
previously it was known as a different name, and the current owner is identifying it as the Oak Street subdivision currently.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there further questions? Councilor Davinsky. Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. You mentioned that in this subdivision, 2 of the homes would have secondary units. That's part of the deal. They can put in more if they wish. These secondary units, are they short-term rentals? Do we have any control over that? I start thinking about Airbnbs and so on. Is that, do we have control on?
Through you, Mayor Charbonneau, I don't believe that that is the intent, but I do think that there's either a town policy or a bylaw that speaks specifically to whether or not short-term rentals are permitted. And I would maybe need to defer to the manager of development services to confirm whether we have that in place or whether our bylaw is silent on short-term rentals.
We can ask the manager of development services to speak to it. You have to.
Well, this is biophilic, Mesozoic man. Okay, this sounds right. Yeah, we don't have a short-term rental bylaw, so we don't have any regulation that limits the term of any rental unit in town.
So they can do whatever they want.
They don't even have to occupy them but we make a positive obligation to require the construction of them because we know that having them built up front is a lot easier than building them a renovation or a retrofit at an after date.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've got my answer. It looks like there could be short-term rentals over which we have no control. We meaning the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions or comments? I just make the comment that, well, this is a good subdivision agreement and I'm pleased to see it happening. I think that with regard to the ADUs, having them however they're used is a good thing, whether they're short-term rentals or whatever they are, because even as a short-term rental, they can be used to offset the cost of the people who own those houses, right? If you buy the house and you are looking to do a rental, you can use that to help pay your mortgage, even as a short-term rental, even as an Airbnb. So those are positive things. And so I'm less concerned about how they get used and more concerned about the fact that they exist because they improve the affordability of housing no matter how they're used. So I think it's a positive thing. And And I'm glad that we continue to include them in our subdivision agreements and as part of negotiations that we have, because it's one of many positive measures towards housing affordability. So if there's no further questions or comments, I believe I had this moved and seconded. Yes, I think I did. Okay. So with that, then I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. All right. So now we're on to the second report, and that is on the Perkins Agreement related to consent B 2023-070, and the Manager of Development Services, Jay Posner, has the report.
Okay, thank you. Just recently, the Perkins have been granted provisional consent by the county for the creation of a new lot on Southampton Street in Port Elgin. It's located at the corner of Gustavus and Southampton. Currently, there's no municipal or water sewer services that run along that portion of Southampton Street. And typically, when a new lot is being created, the town's OP state that the town and the county shall be satisfied that the lot can be appropriately serviced with the water and sewer that is available in the area. In this case, the owners have expressed interest in delaying the installation of those municipal services. So what is being asked is an agreement to be drafted and authorizing the director to enter into that agreement that contains the typical clauses that we would find in subdivisions. A consent, after all, is just a very small subdivision, if you can imagine that. And to address the servicing and parkland and other typical requirements, we're recommending the sort of standard subdivision type clauses, but with the following adjustments, I guess, column adjustments, but I want to highlight them so council's aware of what is being asked. Number one, that an agreement will be registered on title so that future landowners will be aware of all the requirements, and that agreement will require municipal servicing to be completed before building permit can be issued. Next, an inhibiting order, which is rather unique to the town, but an inhibiting order prohibits the sale of any property, and it allows the town to inhibit, as the word suggests, from any lots being sold until the obligations of the town have been met. Number three, the costs associated with servicing shall be borne completely by the owner who wishes to advance the construction. That's very similar to how subdivisions work. Number four, when the work is contemplated, the owner will enter into a further agreement. I would like to add, if necessary, we'd like to negotiate that in the current agreement so you don't have to come back to council again. But that future agreement will require securities and scheduling, coordination of the works, timing of the installation. Next is a parkland dedication fee, and we're suggesting $5,000. A admin fee for the preparation of the agreement of $3,000, and a deposit to cover any engineering and legal review costs that are associated with the prep of the agreement. And yeah, I guess the last one is any terms recommended by the municipal solicitor. At this point, I don't see anything unique, but just to be aware. So there's my report.
Okay, thank you. So there is a recommendation that council directs staff to prepare an agreement to be entered into with Charles Lee Perkins and Jody Neola Perkins to fulfill the conditions of provisional consent for B-2023-070, and that council authorize the Director of Development Services to execute the final agreement. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Stack, seconded by Councillor Halpin. Discussion. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And through you, can I get the manager just to confirm his comments about an inhibiting order? In the materials that we received, it doesn't say, what you said was that an inhibiting order would be registered on the lands to preclude the sale until servicing has been completed. What we received, though, says to preclude development. So is it about the sale or development? I just want to make sure that because it is a new expression for here.
It is, and I don't want to get it wrong. So I don't want to suggest one way or the other, but the idea is it's a tool to make sure that what the town wants gets done before what the town or what the landowner wants happens. So we have to have a measure of control that we haven't had before because it is a little unique situation. I'm not even sure if this mic works, but yeah.
Yeah, we hear you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Jay, so I'm clear, and I have no problem with delaying the payment till the land is developed and, it's 10, 20, 30 grand. May not be sold for 5 years and developed. So I don't have an issue with that, doing it that way. But if the land is sold, right? If the land is sold, same agreement, so it was sold a year from now, and that they take out a building permit and the same agreement, these terms would come into play where they wouldn't be able to develop that until the servicing's done. So is it clear in here that if the land is sold?
Well, I mean, it depends on what the agreement we finally settle on. I don't want to be like evasive, and I don't intend to mean any sort of avoidance to the question, but because we haven't finalized the agreement with the owner, we just want to make it clear we intend to seek these requirements. The servicing must be in before you get a building permit. If they sell, then we will want to make sure the terms of the agreement outline when a sale is made, what protects the town to ensure the servicing is
That's
installed.
precisely my point. I just wonder if you're in agreement that would be made clear in the agreement. The land's sold and these rules
Yes,
apply.
if I may, Mr. Mayor, we expect both parties to be fully aware of their
So,
rights and obligations in the agreement.
I have no problem delaying the payment. It's going to get done anyways at the time of building permit, so.
Okay, further comments? Counselor Stack.
Thank you. Maybe just a more practical question. Is the inhibiting order, or frankly, even the conditions to have it registered on title around the servicing required? Because how else would you develop? How would you develop the land for residential purposes if you're not servicing the land? So my kind of comment would be, is that even just practically necessary? If you're going to construct on the land, you're going to have to service it.
Yes, if I may, it's certainly a lot of our role in this is, because I can appreciate maybe there's a nuanced approach, is that we want to make sure all parties, including future landowners, are aware of their obligations. We've run across situations in site plans, at least, where even when they were registered, future owners claim they weren't aware of obligations. So we want to use the tools that we have at our disposal to ensure current and future owners know the responsibilities. So someone could get a permit for, I don't know, and if the servicing hasn't been extended, they get to a stage of occupancy and there's a whole bunch it's a mess. And so we just want to make sure it can get done.
Okay. And then my other question is just about the parkland dedication fee. I was a bit surprised to see and so I understand it's set out in the Planning Act, the methodology for calculating. Is there any flexibility on that? That struck me as a fairly high fee for a severance of a lot. And then, so question one is there any room for that? And then my second question is, could that not be something that would be put onto the developer of the land or at the time of development? If it's just going to lay fallow and it was laying fallow yesterday and it will lay fallow tomorrow, could we not apply that to whomever decides to develop the land?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, certainly a couple points there feels like, tell me if I've missed any of them. On the laying fallow part, I mean, one of the reasons we're seeking parkland up front at this stage is to ensure that the parks, if we choose to spend money on them, are built before the people are there. That's sort of I think a principle of what we've followed for several years on all sorts of infrastructure, make sure the infrastructure is there before the people are. In terms of the methodology, the Act doesn't actually outline the methodology. It provides that the town has the right to seek up to 5% of the value in the land, either as cash or in actual land. And so our practice has been to be quite aggressive. Councillors around the table will know we've been aggressive in trying to seek, and our methodology has been to look at recent sales where it's possible and suggest a value based on those recent sales. If the landowner disagrees, it tells us the town may seek an appraisal of the property, and whatever the appraiser comes up with is the value of the land. The developer then pays both the appraiser and the appraised value.
Okay, so I just want to go back to that because I think I had some explanation. So if we had for the Oak Street development, I think it was for about half a hectare. I don't know what, and this is maybe an off the cuff question. So if you don't know the measurements, Jay, I apologize.
4 hectares is 1 acre.
Okay, so how do we know where that, I can't even believe we use hectares and meters. What's the difference between the size of the lot we're looking at now and that size?
Do we know the area of the lot? Maybe the owner knows off the top of their head. It's 15 by.
So are they comparable? Like, is that about
No, they would be,
quarter of this?
this would be about a third of an acre.
Okay, so I guess my only I'm just a bit struck. I think it's pretty obvious at this point. I'm just struck by the value we're ascribing to this.
Well, if I may interrupt, Mr. Mayor, okay.
Yeah, sorry, just because I think
ahead.
when you look at, and maybe the size is not going to prove my point, but when I'm looking at 7 to 8 units for 21K, I think roughly in park development fees is what I think. If I'm just using the Oak Street because it's here in front of us, and then I look at this one lot, it strikes me as a fairly outsized cost for the return. Like, so they have one lot, it may in future be developed, it may not, whereas we have 7 units being developed on a lot, and the parkland dedication fee is 21K, give or take. It just strikes me, this isn't really a question, it's more of just a comment. It strikes me as outsized.
So I know we've only got a comment, but may I address the comment?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, certainly, the methodology is more detailed than I gave. I mean, another analysis is it's based on geography. So yes, you could say north of Saugeen River is more valuable than in downtown Port Elgin. But what also is the quantum of land is economy of scale. The more land, there's sort of a dollar per acre goes down. I'd also draw, that the act also says it's the land to be severed. It's not the per lot basis. So, you know, and we don't have a per lot flat fee. So I guess, you know, I'm not asking for, there's my answer, so.
Sorry, I'm really clinging on this point today. And I think my comment would be if we're going to charge landowners, an individual landowner that doesn't have an immediate plan to sell 5,000 or to develop $5,000, we should be taking a more aggressive position on developers who seek to make much more money on the land, even if it's a greater economy of scale. To me, if we're going to charge $5,000 in this case, which again, like I think is outsized for what we're asking for, and given all the challenges and the other opportunities we had to deal with this issue, I just think $5,000 is high given what we're charging other developers. And frankly, I think the conversation should be, we should be charging developers who stand to make much more money off of these lands, much more money for parkland dedication fees, if we're going to charge this much on a single property.
Okay, thank you. Are there further questions or comments from members? Oh, you have another one, Councillor Stack.
Talking more today than I ever do. I don't know if it's possible to amend the recommendation to reduce I don't know if anyone would be amenable, but I at least like to put the option out there. I just $5,000 just strikes me as quite high in this case.
I guess I'd look to staff for a recommendation on, maybe can the director speak to that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. As Jay noted, we're not bound by regulation in terms of the formula. So I think staff have made their best effort to apply our approach consistently, but I don't think there's any reason why a council can't suggest a different value, subject to council's deliberations on that.
Okay, so I guess you can make a resolution, Councillor, if you want, and we can debate it if you have an amendment that you'd like to propose.
Sure. The only thing I want to amend is just moving the 5,000 to something closer to 3,000 to 3,000.
Okay, so it's resolved then by Councillor Stack that the $5,000 parkland dedication be reduced to $3,000. Is there a seconder for that resolution? Seconded by Councillor Halpin. Any discussion to the motion to amend? Councillor Grace.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what would be, for some reason, I thought there was a standard percentage on the value of is that what you used to come up with the $5,000?
The manager of development services.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we feel this land is worth 100,000, so 5% is 5,000.
Okay, Councillor.
Just to be clear, sorry, Mr. Mayor, that's the formula that you apply consistently?
Yes, the Planning Act allows the town to collect up to 5% for residential land, and that's how we have done this since at least before I started, I think, so.
Okay, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. It seems the lots we just approved in Oak Street then where their fee was closer to $3,000. So that means that those lots would be valued at somewhere around 70,000.
The manager of development services.
Yeah, in this case, we had an actual purchase price of that land. So that is a true value of the property, and that's like a defensible value. We're trying to provide a best analysis as I describe whether information is available. This geography of town, it's hard to find vacant land that is not serviced in this part of Port Elgin. So we have to do our best efforts. As I said, if there's a disagreement, my suggestion rather than amending the value is we would seek an appraiser. The appraiser would value the land and whatever values provided by the appraiser is the price paid plus the fee of the appraiser.
Okay. Counselor Stack.
Sorry, I don't want to, just for what it's worth, I don't particularly want to engage in a appraisal. I think that's just an additional cost. I'm just trying to find a reasonable middle ground here, given this has been a fairly protracted issue.
Okay, so we're considering the amendment here and we'll go to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be voting against the amendment because in the absence of any other data as to, other fees that have applied, I don't think it's fair to make a comparison to a project on Oak Street that goes back years in terms of its approval. There's been other lots created recently and, within the last couple of years that we don't have any of the data of what those parkland dedication fees were. So I appreciate that we're aggressive related to parkland dedication because parks matter. And the only way we're going to really be able to fund some activity is by having fees like this in place, and they're there for a reason. And we've been aggressive, and without any other information, I appreciate what you said about $100,000 is a best guess. That's, in my opinion, pretty good value for a lot in an established part of Port Elgin. So I'll be voting against the amendment because I don't think we should do a one-off without some significant background information to guide us in terms of how this really has been applied and what it's meant for other properties very recently. Thank you.
Thank you. Just make sure there's no other comments. I'm going to come back to Counselor Stack. Okay, Counselor Stack.
So is there any, and this is for my edification at this point, is there any guarantee that this money would go to funding parks in that area, or is this just a general pot? Because, and I'll preface that just for my own commentary as well. It's a fairly developed area. There's not a lot of space left in that part of Port Elgin for a park. So is there an attribution of dollars to where the development is going, or the future development would go?
Well, I can only give a general answer, Mr. Mayor, is that council sets the expenditures for park, but they can use the money in the parkland reserve for the acquisition or development of parkland or recreation purposes. So it could go into that area. It could go to a regional sort of facility and go into trail connectivity. There's a lot of flexibility in how it could be used, but council gets to make that decision.
Okay, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Ontario Planning Act, and I spent my career in Parks and Rec, as you know, back in the 80s, set a standard where, municipalities were allowed to collect 5% parkland in lieu of parkland dedication funds for, people, if developers didn't want to provide the land, then we took the cash, and that cash is used for good purposes, and it's to buy more parkland or help fund a $12 million Lamont Sports Park. I think that 5% parkland dedication fees there for a good reason. I'm really concerned about the one-off. Until staff come back and show us, I think you've probably looked at past sales of parkland dedication where lands were severed or you made in separate lots, and I think the 5% is there for a good reason. The province has allowed us to do it. And if we start dealing with one piece of land, one at a time, and stray away from the 5%, I just think it's dangerous. And you've got a $100,000 value you put on based on probably previous sales. I'm assuming that. And if it's $100,000 value, then that's $5,000. And I just think dealing with them one at a time like this is dangerous. And so I won't be supporting it. I just think it's the wrong thing to do.
Okay, so I'd like to consider the amendment now, and then we'll return to the main motion. So I will ask all in favor of the amendment. And opposed? That's defeated. Okay, so now we're back to the main motion, and I have read it and had it moved in second. Are there any further comments to the main motion? I just wanted to make one comment, which is I know that this has been a protracted matter that we've been working on, but I do appreciate the work that staff has done to come up with a way to accommodate the needs of the property owner in a way that also works for the municipality. And this kind of flexibility is important. And I think that I just want to say that I appreciate the work that staff did and their willingness to look at different ways. I spoke to members of the planning staff, both at the county and at the town, about this matter a few times, and I was pleased with their willingness to try to come up with creative ways to solve this problem. So I am thankful for that. So with that, I will ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay. So now we are moving on to bylaws, and there are 3 bylaws there. Anybody wish to have any of those bylaws considered individually? I don't see any requests for that. So the resolutions that bylaws 39, 2024, 40, 2024, 41, 2024 are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 21st day of May, 2024. Is there a mover and seconder? The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Grace. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. And then we're on to the confirmatory bylaw, and it's resolved that bylaw 42, 2024, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and sealed this 21st day of May, 2024. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Davinsky, seconded by Halpin. All in favor? And opposed? That's carried. And finally, we're on to adjournment. I have a resolution that this regular council meeting of May 21, 2024 hereby adjourns at 7:32 p.m. Is there a mover and seconder? Duhaime and Halpin, all in favor. Council stands adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.